Welcome to your Friday Strip Sports Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Glad to have everybody back with me today. Lots of Twins talk coming up here in just a little bit. I'll be joined by Chip Scoggins, who pretty much 5 years ago to the week, almost to the day, wrote a column about the Twins and their total system failure season of 2016. Not to be confused with what is emerging as maybe not quite the extreme, but a failure of many ways so far this season for the 11-19 Twins. I had a chance to see that in person on Thursday for the first time this year, first live sporting event of any kind for me in quite a while. Got to go into the office, got some lovely fan mail, had a few letters that I hadn't seen. One from a 7-page handwritten letter from somebody about Ricky Rubio's free throws and something I'd written a while ago that I hadn't seen. So it was a treat to catch up with all that and to catch up with Chip Scoggins. Also on the show, Ben Perlman, the fan who brought the Fire Rocco sign into the Champions Club, into the high level seats the other day. He will be with us as well to explain why he did that, his particular beef with Rocco Baldelli, the Twins manager, and things of that nature. But first, what did I miss? The Aaron Rodgers story is still not going away, and it feels like it's not going to go away for a long time, and I'll explain that here. So, Aaron Rodgers, obviously, it's been a little over a week since he kind of blew things up right before the NFL draft. The story coming out from Adam Schefter that he's not happy in Green Bay, disgruntled enough that he does not want to come back there. And you're thinking, okay, is this really something that's going to happen? It's going to kind of get smoothed over. Well, now this week we're seeing a lot of different things. We see Peter King, a reporter who I respect, who's been doing this for a long time, saying more likely than not, if he was betting on it, that Aaron Rodgers won't be the quarterback in Green Bay in Week 1 this season. So that surprised me. You have some, I don't know if leaking is the right word, but word gets out that that Aaron Rodgers refers to Packers GM Brian Gutekunst as Jerry Krause in group texts with players. And where does that come from? I don't know if Rodgers would be leaking that. That seems like that's something that's coming from a player, a teammate, who is on that group text chain. So interesting that some teammates perhaps are getting into the mix here and adding to the reporting in this. But the most interesting thing, I think, there's a couple things I saw on ESPN. One, Bill Barnwell writing, about the 7 teams he thinks are most likely to be considered in an Aaron Rodgers trade. You don't do that if it's not at least somewhat likely. But the bigger thing is just a note about when this might happen. The timing is everything, right? Draft night was one place where you didn't expect it necessarily to happen there because that would be a rash decision. The Packers aren't just going to jump into this, hours after the Schefter report comes out. But interestingly, there's a salary cap implication in all this. Basically, ESPN explaining this in a story that came out a couple days ago, that they would save about $16 million if they trade him after June 1st because of cap designations and whatnot. If they don't, they're actually going to owe more on the cap this year because of the way his contract is structured. So that means to me that we've got at least a few more weeks of these stories flying back and forth about Aaron Rodgers, whether it's management trying to push its agenda out there, whether it's Aaron Rodgers putting more information out there about how frustrated he is, whether it's teammates, going on the record, former teammates. You're just seeing everybody having an opinion on this right now, and it's not going to stop because it doesn't make sense for there to be a trade for at least a few more weeks if it's going to happen. So I'm looking forward to it. Just sit back, grab your popcorn, whatever you need to do, crack open a cold beverage, and just watch this all unfold because it's rather glorious. Especially if you root for the Vikings, this is one of the most amazing stories of your lifetime. A quarterback who is the reigning MVP, who has continued this run of great quarterback play in Green Bay. And again, we don't know how great Jordan Love is going to be. He could end up being, the next in this chain from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers and now to Jordan Love, but no guarantees of that. Much better chance that he's average or worse, based on the history of first-round quarterbacks. So sit back, watch this all unfold, and then, keep in the back of your mind that, 2 or 3 years from now, a certain disgruntled former Packers quarterback at that point might be incentivized, just like Brett Favre, to want to go and play and finish his career for the Vikings.
I'm Nyla Jean Myers, Senior Assistant Sports Editor at the Star Tribune. Thank you for listening to Strip Sports Daily Delivery. This work is made possible by our Star Tribune subscribers. For unlimited access to the articles mentioned in this podcast and our coverage of Minnesota sports from pros to preps, go to startribune.com/subscribe.
Happy to have Chip Scoggins on Daily Delivery right now. Chip does a great job covering a variety of subjects in his columns at the Star Tribune, but almost exactly 5 years ago this week anyway, Chip, you called up Jim Pohlad, Twins owner. The Twins were, I believe, 8-20 at the time. Yeah. And you wrote this, you got the quote, the total system failure quote that has been oft repeated. That year's team went on to lose 103 games. I don't feel like this year's team is in that territory yet, but man, 11-19. I was at the game Thursday. Just another extra inning loss. They're 0-7 in extra innings. So let's, Chip, by way of introduction first, let's start with 2016 and kind of like how that whole thing got going and just the idea for that column. And when he said that to you, what was going through your head?
Yeah, it was like you said, they were 8-20, and it was just, I think it was after they had an off day, or
they did have an off day. Yep.
Had an off day. And so I went through the Twins and just said, as you can imagine, the temperature was hot in the Twin Cities, right? There was, I think fans wanted everybody fired. And things were just so bad. They were playing so horribly that I just told the Twins, I said, hey, I think this is a time where the owner needs to come out and say something, at least let fans hear his voice. And so, Jim Pohlad said, yeah, call me. And I remember I was driving home when he called me back. And so, I had my tape recorder on the dashboard on the Bluetooth. And when he said the total system failure, I was like, whoa, it just, it almost like car careened off the side of the road there. And I went back and read the column the other day, Mikey, and he had some just, very strong comments and opinions. I asked him about, the status of Terry Ryan and Paul Molitor at the time. He's like, nope, it's not their fault. He basically just put it all on the players. I asked, well, as the owner, what can you do? And he said, well, it's not much an owner can do. It's just a total system failure here. And we talked about the money, and he said, yeah, I know that's been a topic for 30 years. And he said, I think I know a little bit about finances and those type of things. And the one quote, I don't have it in front of me, but he would say, asked him about his payroll, and he said, well, if you look at our results, I think we're spending too much on payroll or something to that extent. I just, whoa. So he definitely had stuff he wanted to get off his chest, but it was, I'm not sure it was well received by the fan base. The total system failure just became, as I wrote in my column the other day, it became both a punchline and a headline for that entire season.
Yeah, there was so many losing seasons in the early part of that decade, but then 2015 there was actually some hope. I think they won 83 games that year. They were in the wild card hunt kind of until the last weekend at least. So people had expectations going into that year, and this year is different, right? They've won two division titles in a row, and this team isn't as bad as that 2016 team, but results wise they're flawed. I think we've seen enough to say they've got a lot of flaws, and whatever's going on in the field right now, 11-19 with 0-7 in extra innings, all these late close gut punch losses, like how do you compare? Do you even compare those two situations, and how do you assess what's going on right now?
I don't, because I just feel like this team is better than that team. The record, it just felt like the way 16 was going was hopeless. Now, there might be Twins fans that feel that about this team too. But that one just felt a lot more almost like slapstick comedy, how bad it was, whereas this one, I think there's just anger with fan base, with fans and how it's, I will say, I wrote this for today. I think the bullpen is total system failure.
Yeah.
I think this team, just is going to hit more. I think their starting pitcher is going to rotation is going to be better. The bullpen is a disaster right now. So I think I would compare that. But I will say, like, watching this team, I was at the game last night, Mike, and I've watched, predominantly all their games. With the exception of Buxton, this is a boring team right now.
Yeah.
There's just nothing to it. I mean, there's just no life. It's just, you watch the games and they just drag on, and a lot of strikeouts. And I mean, obviously Buxton's playing out of this world. But other than that, it's just something's just off with this team right now.
Yeah, I'd say that. I was at the game recording this Thursday afternoon, not too long after another loss. Now they head to Detroit after this, probably just as well to get out of town for a while. They've lost 3 in a row to Texas here after it seemed like maybe they had kind of figured something out, or gotten things somewhat sorted out here at the start of this homestand. But yeah, the bullpen, it again is two pieces of this, and I want to get your thoughts because I've shared this a few times already. But the bullpen again happens today. Pineda goes 6 innings. Robles comes into the 7th, gives up a home run. That's so all of a sudden tie game, and they haven't won a game this year where they've been tied or behind after 7 innings. You get to the 9th inning, they don't get anything done. Taylor Rogers is lights out. He's great. But you get to the 10th, you got, the start, the runner on second, it was a wild pitch and then a single, I think, through a drawn in infield. And all of a sudden it's 4-3. And it seems like the Twins at that point are expecting to lose. They go into the bottom of the 10th. Astudillo, who never strikes out. Donaldson pinch hit. He strikes out. Sano almost gets a flare to fall in, but a diving catch ends the game. So everything that can go wrong does go wrong. But the bullpen isn't just underachieving. Like, Alexander Colomé has pitched way worse than you think he would. But if you went into this season thinking we're not going to use our starters as much because we're worried about workload after the weird 2020 season, you needed a better bullpen plan where one pitcher really struggling doesn't take the whole house of cards down.
Yeah, and I think it's a 2-pronged thing. It's like every starter goes 5 1/3 innings. And so you're relying on your bullpen to be even better. And when they remade that bullpen, they had so many unknowns and so many guys that were looking for bounce back seasons or prove it seasons or just show that you belong and you can be trusted in high leverage Alcala. Stashak, prove that you can take a next step. And it's just like you're banking on too many of those to come through, and they're not all going to come. It's not all going to come to fruition. So you had big question marks with a bullpen that you planned to use a lot. Well, what do we think was going to happen? And then all of a sudden now Colomé is unusable in high leverage situations because he was better last 2 outings. He was okay last night, although I think it was a hit and 2 walks in 2 innings. But it was, I don't know that they really put enough thought into that plan that they were going to use this year. But it goes back to, and this is how baseball is now, but they just, it's like, honestly, Mike, if they get to the 6th inning with their starters, it's like, well, job's done. It's like, can they go any deeper than this? Can they get to the 8th inning where you don't have to use 4 relievers every game?
Well, that's the problem because they want to protect these guys. So Pineda comes out after 87 pitches, 6 innings today. Like, there's fans screaming, like there literally was a fan you could hear because, it was like 8,000, 9,000 fans there. But you can hear pretty clearly one fan just yelling, Rocco, can a guy throw 100 pitches? Like Pineda, as a veteran, he probably could have pitched, the 7th inning as well. And then you've gotten that bridge to where you're probably just using Rogers and Duffy. And maybe you win that game because, Robles gives up the home run and that ties the game in the 7th. So if that was the plan all along, if 80 to 90 pitches from your starters was the plan all along, the way that works these days, that's not going to get you much more than 5 1/3, 6 if you're lucky. And then you're right, you do have to rely so much on that bullpen. So to you, how much of it is players underachieving? How much is Rocco not moving the chess pieces around in the right way? And how much of it is the way this roster was put together by Derek Falvey and Thad Levine?
Yeah, I wrote about this today because I wrote about the bullpen for my column today that ran in Thursday's paper. And, we all want to blame Rocco or blame Falvey or blame the players or whatever. To me, I was judicious. I gave everybody a third. So I think it's a third on the front office for the way they constructed this bullpen and just turning it over to the degree that they did. It's hard to call him I don't think anybody could predict he's going to have this, these kind of struggles. But like I said earlier, I just think you had too many question marks. I put a third on Rocco. Using Waddell the other night was inexcusable to me. I mean, that had no chance of succeeding. And just his insistence. And Mike, this goes back to the last playoff game last year where Jose Barrios is rolling. He looks like he has a bulldog mentality about him. He wants to keep going in that playoff game against Houston, and Rocco pulls him out. Why? We've been waiting and screaming for years for Barrios to step up and be that guy in that moment. And he was, and they pulled him out. So it goes back to that year. So I think Rocco deserves a third of the blame for just how he manages it. And then also the players. I mean, they just have to perform better. I mean, we've seen Taylor Rogers struggle at times. We give up home runs. We've seen Duffy at times not be as sharp. Colomé is a veteran. He's, whatever is going on with him. So the players can't be absolved of blame either. So I'm giving them all a third.
I think that's fair, actually. And that does, I mean, it's too easy. It's like, there's probably, if you're really going to parse it out, it's probably a little bit more there, a little bit there, but you're right. It's everybody shares in the blame of how this bullpen has gone this season. So I guess the final thought here is what can change here when you're 11-19, and I've talked about this the other day and wrote about this the other day. Like even if you think you're better, you've given up so much ground that you have to play so much better just to be, you got a long way to go just to be 500 at this point. Like you'd have to go 19-11 in your next 30 just to get back to 500 at this point. Like what's the path to that? How does this team show you that, 11-19, even if, the run differential is better than that? How does this team show you that they're better than that and have a path forward?
Well, they have to, and I thought Rocco the other night came as close as he came to criticizing his players, where he's like, when we're ahead in the 8th inning by a run or 2 runs or 3 runs, you have to win those games. You have to. And they've had so many of these meltdowns that the bullpen has just cost them. And that's not the excuse the hitting. I mean, like the hitting last night, they had bases loaded, get no runs. I mean, they haven't had clutch hitting. But they've got to get their bullpen squared away. And I was talking to Patrick Royce about this. Mike, look at St. Paul. Who's coming? Where are the reinforcements coming from?
Yeah,
they're not taking the train from St. Paul over because I just don't see anybody there that's going to come in and save the day. And so, can you trade? Once Kirilloff is healthy and comes back, can you look to trade Sano and try to get a reliever? But I don't know what's his value at this point to other teams.
Yeah, I mean, he's almost 28. He looked clueless again today. He struck out 3 times in Thursday's game. I mean, and we didn't even get to the fact that Buxton got pulled from this game because he came up limping in the 9th inning. Cave came in and played the 10th. So you've got the Kirilloff injury already. He was something you got excited about. If we don't know what's coming, it would be wild to speculate about Buxton at this point, but he did come out of Thursday's game. He's got injury history. Like, you take him out of the lineup, like that's for a team that's already struggling.
Yeah, well, they cannot afford, and that's the thing. It's like, because the bullpen is so bad and things are just so terrible that this start by Buxton is just kind of, I mean, people are paying attention to it, but it's not getting celebrated in the way it should because of just the daily gut punch that they get, that they suffer with these losses. But yeah, if he's hurt, if this is anything that's going to keep him out for a while, go wild.
Someone's got to build a bridge to Vikings training camp, man. But Back in 2016,
but that's right.
Back in 2016, they started 8-20. Their next 28 games were 8-20 also, because I followed up your
Oh gosh,
your total system failure start. So that didn't get any better.
I don't think this team's going to be that bad and win 59 games. Either. But Mike, so last thing, to the point with the bullpen though, it's got to come from within. Like Colomé's got to be better. And I think Rocco, they're going to sit down and say, Rocco, we're going to have to get more out of our starters. You're putting too much stress on guys to perform in roles that they're not ready for. And so you're asking basically 4 innings every day out of your bullpen, and they're just not able to do it. And so they're going to have a fundamental shift where you say, guess what, Barrios, you're going to throw 100 pitches. And I'm not saying, overwork them to where you they run out of gas, but I think these starters can give you more than what he's willing to take from them at this point.
Yeah, even if you could get one more inning, because what happens when you get to the 10th is you've probably used all of your trusted arms just to get to the 10th, and then you don't really have much left there. I mean, sometimes it's been Colomé that's let him down, but sometimes it's not their frontline guys, or if they are, they're tired by the time they get to the 10th, and that's 0-7 in in extra inning games in their first 30. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's. And maybe maybe Rocco needs to look at his philosophy in extra innings too. I don't know and how he approaches it, but 0-7, that's hard to achieve. You have to work hard with 7.
Total extra inning failure. Well,
that's right.
Chip, good stuff. Chip Scoggins, thanks for joining Daily Delivery today. Really appreciate you hopping on, and maybe the next time we talk, there'll be better, happier things to discuss. All right.
All right, brother. Thanks, man.
Joined right now on Daily Delivery by Ben Perlman. This is a first. We don't usually have fans running around at Target Field waving signs on the show, but Ben gained a little bit of notoriety at Wednesday night's Twins game. He had the Fire Rocco sign behind home plate that got picked up by Bally Sports North cameras and seen throughout the ballpark. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael.
So I got to ask right off the bat, what motivated you to bring that sign to the game and run into the Champions Club, as it were, and show it off?
A friend of mine, we were looking for tickets for the game Wednesday night. Yeah, we just we found some good tickets in Champions Club and decided we both passionately do not like the way that Rocco manages ball games. So we figured we'd try to send a message to the organization as well as the fans and see. I didn't expect this kind of a result, but I'm happy that people are kind of jumping on the bandwagon.
There was something on the other side of the sign, right? Was it a Circle Me sign on the other half?
Yeah, it said "Circle Me, Justin."
Okay.
I just figured, maybe I know that Justin's right behind us in the Champions Club there, and so maybe he'd see that sign and. It was kind of also another way for when we went through security that they wouldn't, not like the sign and say, we're going to take that away from you. So we actually put it in between 2 signs. It was one that said "Go Twins" and the other side said "Circle Me, Justin."
Clever. It's clever. You got to, if you're trying to send a message, I guess you've got to play all your cards. Make sure you've got your signs all lined up. Now, you did it once, and then you got the usher came and took you away. Was that because they didn't like what the sign said, or because you were blocking views, basically?
I think it was because blocking views. The usher just told me, you need to go back to your seat. He didn't say anything about the sign. I don't think that there was actually any issue with the sign at all because they just sent me back to the seat. And they let me keep the sign, and I definitely wasn't done spreading my message. I wanted to make sure it got out enough.
How many times did you end up showing the Fire Rocco sign?
3 different times. I did it in the 6th. I think I did it again in the 7th, and then in the 9th.
And that was another disappointing loss, 3-1. They lose again in extra innings. Stop me if you've heard that one before on Thursday. But I gotta back up a little bit because there's been a lot of criticism of Rocco Baldelli, but he was the manager of the year a couple of years ago, won 101 games, had another division title last year. I mean, this is just a 30-game sample where about as much bad has happened that could happen. So is this really, I don't feel like this is even mostly Rocco's fault, but I'll give you the space to describe what the beef is with Rocco, and does it go beyond this season?
Sure. Well, yeah, I would say that when I started watching Rocco's first appearance with the Twins 2 years ago, where they won that 101 games, the first half of that year, I was just like, this is a great manager. I thought, this guy's really good. The team keeps winning. And then I talked to Dan Gladden, and he said, Ben, maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but there's no way to know because they're scoring 8 runs a game. And I said, you got a good point. And so I watched the rest of the season with a different attitude, just waiting for when the Twins have games that are close, when they stop blowing teams away and scoring 10 runs a game, 8 runs here, 7 runs there. And, then at the end of the season, when they went to the playoffs, all of a sudden I see these, these moves that I just don't understand. Jake Odorizzi was the best pitcher that year for the team. He had the best ERA and he was doing really well. They decided in Yankee Stadium that year to hold him out, not just the first game, but the second game too. And instead they went with Dobnak in the second game, for analytic purposes. He's a ground ball pitcher, and in Yankee Stadium is a short field. However, he didn't even make it through 2 innings before he gave up a grand slam, and they were down 7-0. And by then, you're down 2-0 in a playoff series. It's only a 5-game series. It's almost impossible to come back from that.
That's a valid criticism. I guess I would just say, I think some of the blame, especially this season, the players are underperforming. I don't think the management has necessarily given him the best tools to work with. But as you showed off that sign, how was that sign received? Do you feel like people were on your side? Do you feel like there's a lot of anti-Rocco Baldelli sentiment right now among Twins fans?
Yeah, I was actually surprised on how well it was received. I do know that the team, of course, they're struggling. So just for that reason alone, I'm going to have people on my side. However, I think it's the majority are on my side. I'm seeing, with how this got out here or how it got out there. And of course, there's some criticism saying, that, he's been successful for 2 years and give it time. It's a long season. I just don't feel that he's doing anything to help this team win.
Do you have any optimism at all at this point?
No. So where I'm at with Rocco at this point is, as long as he is managing this club, they have a 0% chance of winning a World Series.
Well, you might be right. I mean, it's not like his predecessors necessarily lit the playoffs on fire either. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. I respect the opinion. I respect the takes. I certainly respect, first of all, your willingness to put the sign out there, and second of all, your willingness to come on the podcast, share your name, take it all in for what it's worth. It's a little bit not to say brave, but in the era of internet anonymity, it's nice to see someone to put a name behind a sign. So Ben, I definitely appreciate that. Any final words of wisdom for the Daily Delivery audience?
I would just say, pay attention to those bullpen moves, those decisions he makes late in games, and watch how often it fails. Just keep an eye on that. And I mean, as we saw today, a day after I hold up the sign, we see them pull out Michael Pineda with 87 pitches, 6 innings in. We know our bullpen's struggling, and you watch them go to the bullpen way too early. So just keep an eye on that. If you're still not sure if Rocco's not a good manager, just keep watching those moves, because I don't see anything changing.
Ben Perlman, voice of the fan. A lot of the Twins fans frustrated right now, and for good reason. 11-19. Ben, thanks so much for joining Daily Delivery, and maybe we'll catch up with you down the road. Okay.
Thank you, Michael.
Enjoyed talking to Ben Perlman. Let me be clear, though. I don't think Rocco Baldelli should not be fired right now. That'd be a rash move. The guy's taken them to 2 AL Central titles in his first 2 seasons. They're off to a really rough start after 30 games this year. Forces beyond his control in some cases. He deserves the chance to right this ship and get this season turned around. So makes for fun chatter, and I know fans are frustrated, but in no way, shape, or form should Rocco Baldelli's job be in jeopardy after 30 bad games following 2 really good seasons. Let's end with the cooler. Wild, Wolves, Twins all lost when they played on the same night on Wednesday. They'll get another chance to do it. Same drill tonight, Friday. Twins at Detroit. Timberwolves at Miami. Wild against Anaheim as part of this long homestand. Plenty at stake for each team. Twins trying to snap a 3-game losing skid, get things going in the right direction. Looked like they were starting to turn for them a few games ago. And then they had that walk-off loss, and again, 2 losses after that, and another extra inning loss yesterday. They can't seem to get any traction. Maybe they can start to turn things around against lowly Detroit. Timberwolves playing Miami. That's Jimmy Butler. That's incentive enough. So is the lottery standings at the end of the season. Wild still trying to catch Vegas and Colorado. Tough uphill climb, but winning a couple games against Anaheim sure would help. We'll be back at this again on Monday. Plenty of good stuff coming up next week. Thinking I'll be talking to one of the newest Vikings rookies. Thinking I'll be talking a little outdoor adventure down the Mississippi River and all sorts of other good stuff, including a Lynx season preview. Thanks for listening all week. I'm Michael Rand. Listen to Daily Delivery. Please download it, subscribe, write a review. Always, always, always read Star Tribune, StarTribune.com. You can always catch up on all these podcasts over the weekend. If you missed any this week, they're all still relevant. And we'll catch you again on Monday.